Good afternoon. My name is Robert Lee, and I'm going to be doing this video presentation over a case study found on pages 366 and 367, and it's dealing with gossip at the workplace. Um, Before I get started, I'd like to kind of briefly explain what this case study was about. A young man by the name of Sam was hired part-time at two different schools in the same district as a PE teacher. And at one of the schools, he worked for a department head that was pretty strict. I guess in the text, her name was Miss Sternberger. And when he worked for her at their site, he was required to turn in lesson plans and a detailed, descriptive curriculum of what he's going to be teaching in his class. And at his other site, his uh, supervisor, I guess, is named Mr. Laidback. Things were a little bit different at that site. He was pretty much allowed to do what he needed to do in his classroom. No one really looked after him. Didn't have to turn any type of formal lesson plans or anything like that in. Basically was just left alone to teach. So at one site, things were very, very strict, and at the other site, things were very, very laid back. To describe more in depth of the situation, where Sam kind of felt conflict was when he was working for Mrs. Sternberger. Evidently, through discussion, she found out how Sam was treated and what he had to do at his other site and how laid back things were. And Sam, being kind of a new, naive, loyal teacher, answered the questions that she asked him about how things were done at his other site very honestly. And basically, what it did is it put Mr. Laidback in the other school. Kind of got him in trouble because I guess he wasn't following proper procedure that the district wanted him to follow. The blowback on this was that when Sam went to work for Mr. Laidback, he was notified and obviously found out from whom, and Sam was in danger of losing his job, or felt like he was in danger of losing his job. So that's the predicament there. And what I'd like to do now is kind of address a common sense reasoning to this situation and then deal with a moral based theory, the consequential theory based form of solving problems. Um, to me, in my opinion, there's always going to be talk in a workplace, and probably over half of it is going to be in the form of gossip. Sam, being a new teacher to a new district, two new schools, that's kind of a tough situation for a guy to be in. Wanting to be a guy that was impressive to both supervisors. I mean, he was loyal and he was honest. I don't really know if I find fault with Sam in being this way, because honesty is always the best way to handle a situation. I guess Mrs. Sternberger, when she was asking questions, I think she kind of used Sam's nativity to her advantage and to his disadvantage, because what it did is it really opened up some of the things that were going on in Sam's other school, and possibly got that other teacher in trouble. Um, I guess when you go into a new school setting, you want to get to know as many people as you can, and kind of find out who you can trust in those situations. Doesn't sound like Sam did this or had the time to do it, but I think he was, kind of a victim here, but he didn't really do anything wrong. I think the gossiping that took place was done by Mrs. Sternberger, and she took what he said and kind of ran with it, and got another teacher from another building in trouble, and um, kind of made Sam made out to be the bad guy. So tough situation for him. I think what Sam could have done to possibly help himself out in this situation was to just talk to as many people as he can to get to know people in the building. And then once this situation started happening, to maybe go to his principal or vice principal of the building and explain to them what's going on, maybe doing that in both buildings. And also maybe getting with Mr. Laidback to let him know that he was being honest with questions that were being asked to him, but he wasn't doing it in a way to be vindictive or trying to get anybody fired. The moral-based theory, the consequential theory-based, first thing I guess what I'd like to do is describe the problem in detail. And I think the moral problem here is just honesty and confidentiality. I think when Mrs. Sternberger was talking to Sam about some issues of the things that were going on at his other school, I don't think that was her right to turn the other school in. I don't think it was her right to make it look like Sam was being disloyal to his other boss. I think what might have happened there is Sam might have let Mr. Laidback know that, hey, I'm being asked questions from the other school, and I just want you to let you know that I'm what I'm saying. And I'd like to add in that if Mr. Laidback was doing more of what he should be doing in his job, I guess already, then the issue probably wouldn't have been an issue. But that's the moral problem there. The possible options here could stem from Sam losing his job, to being disloyal by Mr. Laidback, to Mr. Laidback eventually maybe losing his job for not doing his job correctly. So there's several different things that could happen here. Once again, I think Sam just being honest with what was going on and talking to people and telling people what's going to happen or what's going to happen was probably the best thing that could have happened here. Obviously, Mr. Laidback, the department head at the other school who wasn't doing his job well, is going to be affected by what's going on here, as well as Sam, because the worst thing I think Sam has to look at now is maybe he feels like his employer thinks he's disloyal or dishonest. And Mr. Laidback, of course, probably having to answer questions and face some issues from the district on why he's not doing what he needs to be doing. But I think Ms. Sternberger here, going back to asking some questions to Sam and then going above both their heads, I don't know if that was necessarily right. I know that's not the issue here, but basically what she did is she probably used some information from Sam that Sam thought he was talking about in private, about, to a supervisor about some things in another school. And she kind of went and ran with that and passed that information on. I don't know if Sam would have necessarily shared that information with her if he knew that she was gonna report that. So those were some people that could have been affected there. As far as wrapping up the scene and trying to come out with the best possible solution, obviously I think Ms. Sternberger should have kept what Sam was telling her in confidence. I think Sam should have probably asked more questions of Mr. Laidback on what exactly he wanted, and making sure that even though if he didn't expect much, Sam probably going ahead and documenting what he did and preparing as like he prepared in the other school. That way there's consistency on his part. Because I do know that sometimes working in a public school, if something has to happen or there has to be a change made, that usually the low guy on the totem pole is the one that gets removed. Whether that's right or wrong, all the times, that's usually the way it is. But overall, just speaking out of honesty, keeping things in confidential when they need to be, and ended up doing your job and doing what's expected of you. You can't go wrong in that situation. So again, this was the case study, Gossiping at the Workplace, in Chapter 9, pages 366 and 367.